guys, it's Lynn with Littlefoot Nursery. I am here with Reborn baby Charlotte. She is the Charlotte sculpt by Laura Lee Eagles, and her artist is Jade Lucia of Candy Lane Art Dolls. I ordered Charlotte, commissioned a custom order from Jade when I met her at the 2019 Rose Doll Show. She's such a lovely person. And we were in, the same like photography class together. So that was really fun, and it was really nice to meet her. But I love her work. She paints and roots beautifully. So anyway, so I had gotten Charlotte at that time. But yeah, I wanted to change her out of this Christmas outfit, which she's been wearing for a little too long, and change her into this really cute sleeper by ShopDisney. It's Alice in Wonderland themed. And so I thought that would look really cute with her coloring. So I'm going to do that. And the topic I wanted to talk about is inspired by this kind of post one of my doll friends posted on Facebook, kind of just asking the question to her friends in the community. And I think this was a situation that happened with maybe a friend of hers or an acquaintance or somebody in the doll community. But basically, it was a situation where, she had purchased, the buyer had purchased a doll from an artist, and I don't think this was a custom order or anything like that, but she had purchased the Reborn from an artist, and the artist had, in the kind of terms of the sale, something like a 14-day return policy or something like that. Like there was basically a, hey, if you don't want to keep the doll, you may return it within a certain time period, and then and you can get a full refund. So that was the artist's specific policy. And I think this particular, customer who had purchased the doll, she received the doll. Nothing was wrong with the doll, but I think she just had a change of heart, and she decided she didn't want to keep this doll in her collection. And so I think the debate that she was having was, okay, should I contact the artist to take her up on that refund policy, or should I just sell the doll on? And I think that there were just so many different considerations and things that she was worried about. I think she was worried about if she were to take the artist up on the refund policy. I think refunds in the community are fairly rare. Most of the time, if we purchase a doll and we don't like the doll for whatever reason, assuming it isn't some kind of major flaw or issue with the doll that the artist didn't disclose or didn't include photos of or something like that. Oh, look at her. She's so cute. Let me pick her up really quickly. I usually get the changing part done super fast in my videos. Oh, look at her. Hi. Oh my gosh, she's so cute. Oh, it's Charlotte, baby Charlotte. Oh, what a sweetheart. Okay. So normally, people don't tend to do refunds. I think most artists have an all sales are final policy because these are handmade works of art. And again, if there's like an issue with the doll, then contact the artist to like resolve that directly. And I think artists have offered a refund if there was like an issue, or a partial refund or something if there was some kind of issue with the doll. But barring that, if it's just more like a buyer's remorse thing, typically it's a no refunds situation. And then if the person who bought the doll doesn't want to keep the doll, they'll usually just resell it to somebody else. So anyway, so in this particular situation, it's interesting because the buyer, this particular artist, did offer a refund policy. And so you would think, okay, that's simple. Go ahead and take the artist up on that and return the doll. But it's actually not so simple. I think the buyer feared being blacklisted, kind of in the doll community, sort of being known as a difficult buyer, if that makes sense. And it's interesting because it does feel like sometimes in the Reborn and silicone doll community, it can be like a little bit of a secret club or a secret handshake. And if you're known as like a troublesome buyer, like somebody who, kind of tends to treat their dolls roughly and, then kind of blame the artist, or, you're known as somebody who just is just like difficult to work with. Other artists aren't going to want to sell to you, right? Like this is a real thing. So Um, and there can be like gossip and chatter, amongst the community about, troublesome buyers, that sort of thing. And especially in this day and age where there's so many scammers, everybody I think is just on an alert, right? So and this is why we also ask for references and things like that. I had a doll like I was wanting to sell from my collection, and there was one person. I had a ton of inquiries. The person who had inquired first, I did check a reference, and it sounded like it was sort of a mediocre transaction, from the artist's perspective. The buyer kind of gave her a lot of grief when she got the doll and was like, "Oh, it doesn't look like in the photos," and all this stuff. I think finally the buyer decided to keep the doll, but there was a lot of back and forth, and it was very stressful for the artist. So she told me that experience kind of honestly. And, for me, I just decided not to sell to that buyer. I had all these other people who were interested. So I definitely understand where the buyer's coming from in this situation, not wanting to be perceived as a difficult buyer and not wanting to somehow get blacklisted by that artist or other artists. But then it also begs the question, do buyers feel does this kind of take away the power from the buyers, because you sort of want to make sure you're pleasing everyone and therefore not cutting yourself off from opportunities to purchase dolls that you might really want in the future. So I do think that that's like a real consideration. So I think the buyer has to weigh whether it's worth the reputational risk to return the doll back to the artist, and take them up on the return policy. And of course, the artist isn't going to be happy because they pack up these dolls with a lot of care. The baby's all wrapped up. They had to wrap up all the goodies. I mean, all the wrapping paper and stuff. I know it doesn't seem like it's a big cost, but it's the time, it's the energy to pack everything up, and and to have the doll kind of sent back, and then you have to like rewrap everything, and then it's sort of not like totally brand new anymore, so it doesn't feel quite right to I don't know, like I guess you would resell it in brand new condition, but there's just something a little weird about that situation, going forward. So the other thing the buyer thought about was just reselling the doll, and this part was weird. I think that she was also worried about getting criticism from the community of just reselling the doll on like right away, and hurting the artist's feelings, right? Like maybe the artist will feel that this buyer didn't like her doll, right? So that's also something that she was worried about. And so I think she just felt like she was a little bit stuck. Like she had bought this doll, she didn't want to keep it anymore, and she didn't feel like she could go to the artist to return the doll to get her money back, and she didn't feel that she could resell the doll on without like hurting the artist's feelings. So it's a tricky situation. And I think that a lot of the people who were commenting on the thread, a lot of the artists do say they have a no refunds policy. And I actually have the same thing with the dolls that I sell, especially because all of mine tend to be custom orders, because, you're commissioning the artist to make the doll exactly the way that you're, kind of requesting. And so, it really is sort of meeting your specific demand versus the demand of the general market. So if I'm just going to make this up, it's an extreme example, but if you request an artist paint the doll purple, this would never happen, but I'm just using this as an example. If you decided you didn't like the doll and wanted a refund, it's not very easy for that artist to sell the doll to somebody else, because a purple doll is not a very popular color to paint a reborn doll. Again, super extreme example, but just wanted to kind of use that to illustrate that point. So I do feel like for custom orders, it should be no refunds. It really should, if there's an issue with the doll, just work it out with the artist to get it fixed. But I do think if it's a doll that was ready made and purchased, I also think that as long as a lot of photos were included and exactly what you're getting, it should also, I understand that for an artist, that should also be no refunds. Like you should be very careful as a buyer, make sure you looked at all the photos, read the description, all of that stuff, before you make a purchase, and ask the artist or the seller questions before you make the purchase. I think that's all really important as well. But yeah, this whole concept of like kind of the buyer's reputation, and I know we've talked about this in other videos before. I just think it's really interesting that, you know, buyers do feel like they kind of have to, I don't know, tread carefully, you know, in buying and selling, and trying to establish a reputation as a good customer, especially if you're new to the community. And but yeah, I think for artists especially, these dolls are very expensive. So when they're trying to decide who to sell to, they're going to want to pick the buyer who pays promptly, who doesn't give them any trouble, who has a reputation of just being sweet and kind and not difficult to deal with. I think that's natural. But I do think that the flip side of that can be the buyer feeling, I guess, like a lack of empowerment. Like if there is a real issue that comes up, sometimes the buyer, I have seen this happen where the buyer will sometimes just swallow that and say, you know what, I'm just gonna move on, and maybe I'll just sell the doll on, and you know, but not make a big fuss about it or a big stink about it, because they don't want to have that reputation of, I don't know, you know, being difficult in the community. So, but it is an interesting dilemma, and I do think in some respects, like, you know, it's hard to find that right balance between being fair to the buyer and fair to the seller. And I think it's because these dolls are not, um, you know, manufactured pieces of, you know, they're not manufactured items that you can just kind of order from a store, right? So it's they're either custom made or they're one of a kind collectibles, and a lot of work and heart and energy, you know, goes into making these dolls. And the other thing too, when you return a doll, it's the shipping itself is so expensive, it sometimes just doesn't feel worth it, right? Like I remember with a lot of dolls that I've made, it's like $60 to ship, or 60 or 80 or sometimes even more to ship each direction. So if you're going to pay for round trip shipping, and if it is a situation where it's buyer's remorse, the seller should not be out of pocket for the shipping. Like the buyer really should be paying for return, you know, shipping both ways in that situation. If it's a problem with the doll, that's different. But if the buyer, it's their choice and the seller somehow does accept returns, the buyer could be out, you know, $150 or something round trip to ship the doll back and forth. That would be more for silicone that's heavy and where you're going to do insurance and things like that. But even for a reborn, like even if you do like the priority mailbox, it could be like $30. So that's like $60 to ship it back and forth. Does that feel worth it, or is it just better to go ahead and just resell it, like, and save everybody a little bit of hassle, and then you can recoup at least half the shipping cost? I don't know. I just find it an interesting question, because yeah, but it really made me think when I was reading about this situation, because it's a situation where, you know, the seller, and I guess I would say, if as a seller you offer a refund as part of your policy, and maybe it's because you just want the buyer to have peace of mind and confidence in purchasing from you, then that's great. But you should also not be upset if the buyer does decide to take you up on that refund policy, because because for the buyer to feel like they can't, that's a little messed up, right? But I feel like most of the listings that I see, I think it's a no refunds situation. And look, we all have buyer's remorse, or things come up and we need the money. You know, just sell the doll and, you know, resell it, you know, in that situation. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video and this topic. Please leave a comment below. I would definitely love to hear what you guys think about refund policies in the Reborn doll community. And baby Charlotte is going to say bye to her aunties, and we will see you guys on the next video. Bye.